Hello. My name is Olivia, I am 32, and if you are reading this, it means that I am finally at the stage where I can tell my story. Without shame. Without fear. Without trying to justify or soften anything. Just the truth. I am a widow. A mother. And a woman who has lived through hell behind closed doors. After my husband died, I was left with a young son and an empty refrigerator. And also with his mother, whom everyone considered an angel in human form. She talked about love, read the Bible, and baked cookies for the neighbors. But behind closed doors, she quietly built a system to destroy me as a mother and take my son away from me. When my husband, Daniel, died in a car accident, I was in the shower, literally. It was late on a Saturday night. I had just put our son Noam, who had just turned 5, to bed. 10 minutes earlier, I had sent Daniel a text asking him to buy milk. His phone never answered. The police arrived at 2:13 a.m. I wasn't even scared. I thought something had happened to the neighbors. I remember opening the door in my bathrobe, my hair wet, and seeing 2 officers. One of them, a woman, was holding a hat in her hands. And then I understood everything before she even said anything. Everything after that is a blur. The funeral. The emptiness. People talking about God's will and the plan from above. I hardly ate or slept. I couldn't look at my son without feeling guilty. I couldn't save his father. I couldn't save him. When Noam and I lost our apartment, our savings quickly ran out, and I was on maternity leave. It seemed like the worst was yet to come. Then she appeared, Miriam. My mother-in-law. A brilliant, charismatic, devout woman. A widow. The mother of an only son who was no longer with us. She was the one who was adored at church, who ran a charity in Daniel's honor, who gave insightful speeches about faith and the power of family. She reached out to me. She offered to help. She said that Noam and I would be better off in her home. That we were her family. That God wanted us to be together. I believed her. The first few days were peaceful. She carried Noam in her arms, cooked our meals, prayed before bed. She had the manners of a queen and a soft voice that betrayed a deep sorrow. She said she saw herself in me. That we had to stay together for the sake of the child. And then it started. You didn't clean the kitchen again. That blouse is too revealing. You're a widow. Noam cried in his sleep. He must not like you. This isn't what my son would have wanted. She turned off my internet in the evenings so I could spend more time with God. She asked me to change clothes in front of her friends because I didn't look worthy of Daniel's memory. She told Noam that his dad would be sad if he saw how I was behaving. And then she started locking the door when they played together without me. I tried to tell myself it was grief. That she was losing her mind from grief. That it was just her way of coping. But every time we were alone, she stopped being that sweet grandmother with the face of a saint. She became someone else. Cold. Logical. Ruthless. She knew where to push. What painful places to press to keep me quiet. And I kept quiet. I kept quiet when she said she was controlling my budget for my own good. When she hid my things. When she threw away my letters. When she started writing down how I yelled at Noam, even though I was just trying to get him to eat his broccoli. Once I found empty wine bottles in my room. I didn't drink. I couldn't. I was in mourning, raising a child, in danger. But those bottles were photographed. And a week later, I saw her post on social media about testing your faith when someone close to you is suffering from addiction. After that, my friends started to distance themselves. People at church avoided my eyes. And Noam started asking why I was always sad, why his grandmother said that I might be taken to the hospital. He was afraid of me. My child was afraid of me. On the morning of the 4th day at Miriam's house, I woke up to the smell of cinnamon. It seemed like a pleasant little thing, the aroma of fresh baking, sunlight streaming through the stained glass on the stairs. But something was wrong. The silence was artificial. It was a scene from a commercial, a perfect morning. And I was an extra in someone else's production. I crept into the kitchen in my robe, still keeping myself as still as a shadow. Miriam was standing at the oven, carefully drizzling honey glaze over the muffins. Her hair was curled, her makeup flawless. She didn't notice me right away. "You're awake," she said without turning around. Her voice was friendly, calm, almost gentle. Great. Gnome is still asleep. I didn't wake him. He needs his rest. You know, he's very upset about his father's death. He needs stability. I nodded silently. It was one of those moments when you feel that every word is a trap. You don't see the trap yet, but your instinct warns you, don't step there. I've decided, she continued, handing me a cup of coffee. You and I are going to set up a schedule. The days, the hours when you cook, when you clean, when you take Gnome to school. It's not to control you, no. She raised her hand like an actress asking not to be interrupted. It's just to avoid chaos. Chaos is the enemy in a home, especially for a child who has lost his father. I looked her straight in the eye for the first time. And I saw neither pity nor pain. Only determination. She had already decided something for both of us. And that us was just a formality. Okay, I said quietly. I needed more time to understand what was happening. I was cornered, but not yet broken. The next few days were like little tests disguised as care. She criticized my wardrobe. That's too revealing. Widows don't wear jeans. They don't seek attention. She shamed me for being tired. If you don't have the strength to get up at 6, how are you going to be a mother? She made me clean everything until it sparkled, but then she would wash the dishes again in front of me. I'm not blaming you. You weren't taught how to be a real housewife. I still said nothing, because Gnome was what kept me going. He was my anchor and my pain at the same time. At 5 years old, he started asking his grandmother for permission to hug me. The same boy who used to fall asleep on my chest suddenly stopped looking for my hands. Grandma says I should pray for you because you're sad sometimes, he whispered to me in the evening. And when mommy is sad, it can be dangerous. I didn't cry. Not there. Not then. Instead, that evening I took out an old flash drive and Googled how to record conversations without breaking the law. There are things you get used to slowly. Like water that slowly heats up until you realize you're boiling. First, my phone disappeared. Well, not exactly disappeared, it just stopped working. Miriam appeared with her own old smartphone in her hand. I saw that your device keeps crashing. I have a spare, you can use it. Everything is already set up. Set up. Everything. Messengers, Wi-Fi access only through her password, and even GPS. She handed me a shiny, unfamiliar device under the guise of concern, like in a movie about cults. And I stupidly said, thank you. A few days later, I lost access to my bank card. You're not working right now. I transferred everything to a joint account, she explained with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. You have nothing to worry about. God takes care of those who obey. I became like a prisoner in a golden cage, where the pillows were embroidered with Bible quotes and the carpet covered a trap. Even my diary, the only place where I could write anything of my own, disappeared one day. And when I hinted that someone had taken it, Olivia, Miriam sighed. You probably just forgot where you put it. This is the second time this week you've lost something. I'm a little worried about you. She paused, very cautiously. Maybe you should talk to someone, a professional. I know a wonderful Christian psychologist. She helped me when I lost my son. You could start by talking to her. Just a little consultation. For your own safety. And Gnome's safety. There it was, that word. Safety. She said it like a sentence. One day, I found Miriam and Gnome in the kitchen. She was sitting across from him, holding his little hands in hers, whispering. He nodded, obediently, quietly. When I walked in, he looked up at me and looked away for the first time. We were just discussing how important it is to tell the truth, she said. The truth sets you free. I felt my heart tighten in my chest, my body tense with pain. But I didn't say anything. Not yet. That night, I started taking notes on that same, unfamiliar phone. I quietly turned on the voice recorder before going to sleep. I saved the files under names like cookie recipe or kindergarten schedule. Every minute of conversation where she talked about my instability, where she said I had depressive tendencies and didn't always think clearly, everything was recorded. At the time, I didn't know that these bits and pieces would become my shield. Back then, I was just trying to save myself somehow, some way. After another consultation with her psychotherapist, Miriam announced, I've decided it would be better if Gnome sleeps with me a few nights a week. He's scared when you talk in your sleep. I dropped the cup. It shattered. It was the first sound to break our new silence. And I said only one thing. He's my son. She smiled. Slowly. Coldly. No, Olivia. He's my son's son. Have you ever had a room that smells so clean that it feels dangerous? Miriam is obsessed with smells. Lavender in the bathroom. Vanilla in the living room. Cinnamon in the kitchen. Everything had to smell cozy, homey, stable. But over time, these smells started to make me feel sick. Because with each scent came an order. A hint. A rule. And a prohibition. After the incident with the cup and my emotional outburst, as she called it, a new phase began. The phone she had helped me with no longer had access to the mobile network. Only Wi-Fi. I couldn't make calls myself, only receive them when she allowed me to. "Oh, your friend Rachel called," Miriam said one day. "But I thought you wouldn't want to talk right now. You were in the shower." I wasn't in the shower. I was in the kitchen. Right across from her. Then I tried to text Rachel from my tablet. She didn't respond. Neither did several other friends. And then I noticed that I had been kicked out of 2 group chats. My friends didn't stop texting me. They no longer believed that I wanted to talk to them. Because some of them had already gotten hints. Olivia is going through a difficult period. We are all praying for her mental health. She needs peace. Peace was the new word Miriam used to stifle the truth. My college friend, Linda, tried to call me directly. She left a voicemail, which then disappeared. I only saw the notification and that was it. Like a ghost. "Did you delete my message?" I asked Miriam that evening. She smiled as if I had said something strange. "Sweetie, you probably deleted it yourself by accident. It happens when you're out of balance." Out of balance. Those words stung like a jab in the ribs. The next week, I tried to go back to work. I had connections at a publishing company where I used to work as an editor. I sent them a letter asking to discuss part-time work remotely. The reply came 2 days later. Restrained, polite, cold. "We appreciate your interest, but we are unable to work with you at this time. We wish you a speedy recovery." Recovery. I didn't write about my illness. I didn't mention therapy. I didn't mention any health problems. Someone wrote for me. Miriam. I found a draft of the letter on her laptop the next time Gnome got pain on himself, and she asked me to quickly find a towel in her room. Her laptop was open. I saw a tab with my name in her email. The subject line read, "Recommendation Olivia T. Personal." My body went cold. She wrote about postpartum depression, difficulty adjusting after the loss of a husband, and a tendency toward isolation. She sent it to my work, trying to convince them that I wasn't ready for professional responsibilities. I didn't have time to copy the text. She came into the room. I pretended I was just looking for a towel. "Are you okay?" she asked, as if interested. "You look tired." I didn't eat dinner that night. I just sat in my room and stared into space. Gnome came to say goodnight before bed. He came up to me, hugged me, but held me cautiously, as if checking to see if I would explode. "Grandma says you're just a little sad because Dad is in heaven. But you'll be cured soon." Cured. The word became a new threat. I smiled. It worked. "Do you know that Mom can get better too, if she wants to? But Mom knows how to get better in her own way." He nodded and ran to Grandma's room. She didn't ask for permission anymore. She just took it every night. That night, I made a backup copy of all the recordings on a flash drive, which I hid in Gnome's pillow. And for the first time in a long time, I fell asleep. Not because it was peaceful, but because I was already preparing for war. The next morning, I woke up to silence. It was restless, like before a storm. Gnome wasn't in his room, that had become the new normal. But this time, when I went to look for him, neither he nor Miriam were home. There were no jackets in the hallway. The keys were gone from the hook. I grabbed the phone, hers, and saw a single message. "Gnome and I are at the therapist. We decided to make this a regular thing. Don't worry. You said yourself that he needed more help." Nowhere did I give permission for this. And the worst thing was that I couldn't even find out who she was taking him to. I sat down on the floor in the hallway, my knees pulled up to my chest. I had only one feeling. I was no longer a mother. I was a guest in someone else's life. I was gradually being erased. A few days later, she showed me Gnome's drawing. He drew a family, she said casually. See? Here's him, me, and his dad. Where am I? Maybe he forgot. Or, subconscious. Children feel more than we think. I didn't answer. I just took the drawing. It was sketched in pencil, simple as 5-year-olds' drawings always are. But one detail struck me. In the place where the eye should have been, there was a sun. Not a person. Not a mother. A son. Distant, silent. A decoration. That same week, she invited a guest to our house. A middle-aged woman with a smile that never reached her eyes. They drank tea while I washed the dishes. This is Claire, Miriam announced. She's a child psychotherapist. She just came to see how we're doing here in our little world. Claire tried to get me to talk. I responded as if I were playing a game, cautiously, evenly, without emotion. Do you feel safe? It depends on the weather. Do you ever feel sad? Who doesn't? Does your son often ask you to hug him? We have our own rhythm. Do you cry in front of him? I looked her in the eyes. And for the first time, I allowed myself to say something honest. I cry when strangers come into my home without permission and ask me personal questions as if I were under investigation. Claire fell silent. Miriam smiled. She's been a little emotional lately. That night, I found another flash drive in the kitchen drawer. It was empty. Probably left there by someone. I transferred all my files to it, just in case. And hid it in Gnome's teddy bear. Inside. I cut open the seam and sewed it back up neatly. I wasn't living anymore. I was surviving. And I still hoped that I could hold on to myself, my son, my story. Because history is power. As long as it's yours. And then, 2 weeks later, something unexpected happened. I received an anonymous message on an old social media account that miraculously still existed. Your mother-in-law is already preparing a lawsuit. She says you're unstable and wants to get custody of your son. Think about how you're going to prove it. It was signed simply, friend. At that moment, I knew only one thing. She was preparing to strike. And I no longer had time to hesitate. The next morning, I woke up with a clear plan. The fear hadn't gone away, it had just turned into fuel. I started by changing my iCloud password. I found an old tablet that had belonged to Daniel and restored my forgotten account. It still had our messages, family photos, videos with Gnome, the stuff Miriam hadn't been able to delete. It was mine. Finally. I made another backup of the audio recordings. I scattered the files across the cloud under different names. I started keeping a diary, handwritten in small letters, in a cookbook. The pages looked like recipes. But between the lines was a chronology of humiliation, falsification, and the destruction of me as a mother. That week, Miriam was kinder than ever. She baked cookies. She brought me coffee in my room. She hugged Gnome demonstratively every time I looked at them. And I knew, this was the calm before the storm. She started talking to Gnome in a completely different way. See, dear, how Grandma is always with you. Mom is often tired. It's not her fault, she's just weak right now. But you can always count on Grandma. And he listened. Because children don't analyze, they absorb. And I saw how he gradually began to avoid me. Not because he didn't love me, but because he had been taught that love was something else. On Thursday, she put a folder on the kitchen table. It's just a formality, she said, drying her hands with a towel. An application for temporary extension of my guardianship rights. I often pick him up from school, take him to the doctor, buy him clothes. It's no big deal. Just for convenience. Sign here and here. I didn't touch the pen. Why now, all of a sudden? Because I'm thinking about the child. You seem to be living in your own reality. You haven't gone back to work. Your emotions are unstable. Remember how you yelled at me in March? You threw things in my room, I reminded her. She shrugged. We all lose control sometimes. But some people regret it right away. Others record voices on their phones and keep flash drives and toys. Do you think I don't see what you're doing? I froze. She knew. At least something. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Gnome was lying next to her, and I was in my room with a pair of scissors in my hand. Not for self-defense. Just so I wouldn't feel helpless. And then I decided I'm going to see a lawyer. At any cost. I asked my old colleague Linda, whom Miriam hadn't yet managed to cut off, to meet with me. She agreed. We arranged to meet in a local park as if by chance. The next day, I said I was going grocery shopping. Great, Miriam smiled. Just be back by 4. Claire and I are having guests over. She wants to talk to Noah again. She has some questions about your attitude toward discipline. It was code. She was already preparing an official statement. Her version with a therapist, witnesses, and evidence. When I met Linda in the park, I looked like a ghost of myself. But I brought the flash drive. Printed notes. Photos of the bottles I managed to photograph. And Noah's drawing the one without me in it. Linda listened. She was silent for a long time. And then she said, I know who to show this to. But you need a lawyer. And you need to get out of there, Olivia. Otherwise, you'll lose your son. I didn't answer right away. Because at that moment, I already knew that I had lost almost everything. But not yet, not him. I've always been scared of paper walls. In the old house with Daniel, if I talked on the phone in the kitchen, he could hear everything in his bedroom. But now, in Miriam's house, those thin walls became my ally. Because one night, they gave me a chance. I was lying in bed, pressed against the wall, when I heard a muffled voice. It was Noam. He was talking to his grandmother. But why can't I stay with Mom? Because she's still sick, my boy. She doesn't always think straight. We don't want anything to happen to her, do we? But she's nice. She reads to me when you're at the store. She gets tired, sweetheart. Remember how she yelled at you when you didn't want to eat your porridge? Or when she forgot to pick you up from school? That never happened. I felt the blood pulsing in my temples. She's already fabricating memories. Creating a new reality, one in which I am the monster and she is the savior. The next day, I took the plunge. For the first time since my captivity began, I openly confronted her. Miriam, I don't want Claire talking to Noah without me anymore. He's my child. And I have a right to be present during any discussions about his mental state. She slowly put the cup down on the table. She looked at me as if I were sick. Olivia, you're upsetting our spiritual balance. I'm doing everything for you. For you. For him. Why are you so ungrateful? Because I'm not a thing. I'm a mother. And I remember when he called me mommy and asked for permission to hug me. Silence. For the first time, there was real silence between us. Not filled with coffee, not covered up with Bible quotes. Silence in which she finally understood. I woke up. Linda returned 2 days later with a lawyer, Sarah Walker. Short, tough, with a shark-like gaze. We met at the same cafe where Miriam never went because of the milk foam of dubious origin. Sarah reviewed all the evidence. She looked through the records. She heard snippets of phrases. You can't leave without permission. Your emotions are hurting Noah. We're considering your right to be a mother. When she finished, she said one thing. Everything looks like caring on paper. She's good at covering it up. We have to act fast. She's either already filed or she will in a few days. What should I do? Hang in there. Right. Document everything. And when she makes her first move, we'll respond so fast she won't know what hit her. I returned home with a new determination. And I knew right away that she knew something. Because her cold voice greeted me at the door. I found out that you met with a lawyer. That changes our terms. I notified social services. They're coming next week to assess your readiness for motherhood. Great, I replied. I was just putting together some materials for them. She didn't expect that. In the evening, I managed to talk to Noam again. Mom, are you going somewhere? He whispered. Why do you ask? Grandma says you're going away for treatment soon. But I don't want you to go. I hugged him close. I'm not going anywhere, sweetheart. But maybe soon we'll leave here together. Would you like that? He nodded. Very seriously. And for the first time in months, he whispered. Only with you, Mom. Monday. The day that Child Welfare Services arrived. Everything in the house sparkled. New curtains, fresh cookies, Bible quotes on magnets on the refrigerator. Miriam talked about hospitality in the spirit of Corinth, and I watched her turn our home into a showroom of lies. The social worker, Miss Fraser, seemed attentive. She asked me questions, formal, restrained, with the same tone of voice as a nurse in a mental hospital. Have you been feeling emotionally exhausted for a long time? How long have you been out of work? Have you ever lost track of time or control? Miriam sat next to me, smiling. She sometimes confuses the days. But that's natural after a loss. I'm here to help. And Noam is so attached to me, isn't he, dear? Noam was silent. He just stared at the floor. After the check, Ms. Fraser asked to take a quick look around Noah's room. Miriam went with her, leaving me in the kitchen. That's when I noticed something on the table that paralyzed me, my old diary. Open. On the page where I wrote about my panic attacks after the funeral. It was covered in yellow marker notes. Signed, Examples of Instability. My flash drive. My notes. My handwritten truth, now evidence against me. I hid the diary when I heard footsteps. I'm sorry, Miriam said to me after the employee had left. I had to. You're leaving me no choice. I won't let my grandson grow up with someone who refuses to accept help. This isn't help. It's control. No, it's love. Just not the kind you're used to. A day later, I found out that the first hearing was scheduled for the following week. Miriam had indeed filed for custody. She claimed that I was emotionally unstable, that I showed signs of alcoholism, and that I was neglecting my child. The following were included in the case file. Photos of bottles in my room. Recorded testimony from a neighbor I had never spoken to about nighttime screams and strange visitors. A report from Claire, a neutral child psychotherapist, who described my detachment and unpredictable behavior. My reality was distorted, pieced together from fragments and twisted against me. When I told Sarah about it, she wasn't surprised. She just said, "She's been setting this trap for years." Real manipulators always have a plan A, B, and C. But you've already started to fight back. We'll start the counterattack. She hired a private investigator. It took him only 2 days to find the cameras installed in Noam's room. Small, inconspicuous, but real. Microphones activated by sound. This is a serious violation. It can be classified as espionage. And that's the key. That night, I cried openly for the first time. Not quietly, not in the bathroom, not into a pillow. I stood in my room and sobbed. With relief. Because something had finally changed. Because this was no longer my internal battle, it was now an official war. And when Noam came in at night, sat down next to me and whispered, "I heard you crying. You won't leave me, will you?" I didn't answer with words. I just took him in my arms like I used to. Like always. My voice was no longer silent. I imagined court to be completely different. Dramatic outbursts, tears, truth prevailing. In reality, it was a cold room with plastic chairs, the smell of old air conditioning, and stacks of papers that would decide people's fates. I was not greeted there as a mother. I was greeted as a defendant. The judge, a dry, neat woman with glasses covering half her face, looked through the documents with an expression as if she were reading reviews of a boiler. Miriam sat next to her lawyer. A gloomy, sophisticated type holding a folder labeled, "O. Taylor, Unstable Mother." My name was on the cover, along with psychiatric terms and lies. They began with a statement from psychologist Claire. She described me as emotionally closed off, avoiding my maternal responsibilities, incapable of providing a stable upbringing. Her son feels more comfortable with his grandmother, she said. The child intuitively craves the stability he lacks with his mother. I wanted to scream. But Sarah squeezed my hand. Then our neighbor, Mrs. Nolan, spoke up. I've heard her screaming several times. And I've seen men coming into the house. Very suspicious. The men were a plumber and a delivery man. I remembered those days clearly. I even kept the receipts. Miriam opened her eyes and began her speech, skillfully balancing tears and Bible quotes. I lost my son. I only have my grandson left. He's my last family. And I just want to make sure he's okay. Olivia, she's trying. But her instability is a real threat. And I'm not saying this out of malice. I'm saying this out of love. I wanted to stand up, to shout. But Sarah got up first. Your Honor, she said, pulling out a flash drive. We have other information. Recordings. Photos. Reports from a private investigator. Proof that the bottles were planted. That a neighbor saw the events when I wasn't home. That the psychologist who actually examined Olivia found her mental state to be normal. We have correspondence where Ms. Miriam warns Olivia's friends that she is sick before she even went to court. The judge was silent for a long time. She flipped through the documents. She listened to the audio recording where Miriam whispers to Noah, "Your mom is tired. Soon you will live with me, and everything will be better." When she looked up, her expression changed. "I am issuing a temporary restraining order against Miriam from approaching the child until further proceedings. The child will remain with his mother." The court's decision sounded like a bell ringing. I left the building, holding Noam's hand. He didn't ask any questions. He just squeezed my hand as if he was afraid I would disappear. Miriam was standing on the steps. Her face was stone. "This isn't over," she whispered. "I'll get him back. I'll find a way." I didn't answer, because at that moment I knew. I wasn't afraid of her anymore. Noam and I left. New city, new home, new schools. Silence. The move was quiet. No announcements, no goodbyes, no social media posts. I just gathered Noam, our most important belongings, and the flash drives with the evidence, and left. No one saw us off. Linda, my old colleague, turned out to be more than just a friend. She found us a rental apartment in a small town 100 miles away. The neighborhood is quiet, and the school is 2 stops away. No one here asked why I looked tired. There were no faces that recognized Miriam. I didn't take any of my things with me from that house. I even bought clothes at a thrift store. I didn't want to carry a single thread of her control with me. Noam started 1st grade. He was nervous. Not about school, but about whether I would stay. "You won't disappear, Mom?" he asked on the first day, holding my hand as if it might crumble. "Never," I replied. And this time I was sure. He was given a bright backpack and a name tag. He became the new kid. And for the first time, it didn't scare him. Because I was there. I got a part-time job at the local library. It was modest, but stable. Paper, books, silence, it all gave me back a sense of control. Linda had connections at the county courthouse, and she advised us to make the divorce official. Because what Miriam had done, falsification, invasion of privacy, illegal surveillance, could still come back to haunt her. But the main thing was that I had to get a legal decision granting me full and exclusive custody. No temporary or restricted. The hearing was scheduled for a month later. This time, the court was in a completely different district. A different judge. A different atmosphere. No spectators. Just me, my lawyer, Miriam, remotely, via video link, and her new lawyer. The judge asked briefly, "Are the facts of observing the child without the mother's consent confirmed?" Yes. Was there a breach of confidentiality, including an attempt to falsify evidence? Yes. Are there grounds for permanently restricting Miriam's custody rights? Absolutely. Miriam tried once again to play to the crowd. Crying, begging, she stole my grandson. I only wanted what was best for him. But this time, it didn't work. The judge said calmly, "Ms. Miriam, your behavior demonstrates emotional destructiveness and deliberate manipulation." The court grants Olivia Taylor's petition for sole custody of Noah. A permanent restraining order is also issued. After the trial, I didn't cry. I didn't even smile. I just walked out onto the street, breathed in the air, and for the first time in 2 years, I didn't look over my shoulder. It wasn't a victory. It was liberation. Noam and I started living like a normal family. He liked school. He started cleaning his backpack and drawing pictures on his own. His teacher said he was open and bright. I quietly thanked God, not for a miracle, but for being in time. In the evening, we had dinner together. There was no silence between us. No fear. No eavesdropping. Noam drew pictures of the 2 of us. I was in the drawings with eyes, hands, warmth. And there was no grandmother taking me off the stage anymore. We really started to live. And then, 3 months later, that day came. School. Last class. I was 2 minutes late. Noam wasn't among the children leaving the classroom. He wasn't in the building. He wasn't there at all. I ran around the entire perimeter of the school 3 times. I asked teachers, security guards, children, everyone just shrugged. He left a little early, said the security guard. With a relative. A woman. She said his mother asked her to pick him up. My vision went black. I don't remember how I dialed 911. The police arrived in 12 minutes. Those were the longest 12 minutes of my life. I repeated the same thing over and over. I have a court order. No one is allowed to come near him. No one. Especially her. They checked the cameras. A black sedan with tinted windows. On the video, a small figure of Noah getting into the car. A woman with a hat, her face hidden. But he didn't resist. On the contrary, he hugged her. He thought it was a game, I whispered. She tricked him. She kidnapped my son. The police launched a search. They questioned everyone. Taxi drivers, security cameras, car rental companies. I called everyone I knew, Linda, Sarah, even the old priest Miriam used to go to. No one knew anything. For hours later, Noam was found. He was in an apartment Miriam had rented under a false name on the outskirts of a neighboring town. The police burst in while she was reading him The Little Prince. She didn't resist. She just looked at them and said, I saved him. She doesn't understand what's going on. He has to be with me. I'm his home. Noam was physically unharmed but frightened. He didn't say a word to me when I rushed to the police station. He just clung to his teddy bear as if it were the only constant thing in the world. I sat with him all night. I kissed his hands. I whispered, I'm with you, and no one will ever take you away from me again. The next day, Miriam underwent a psychiatric evaluation. The doctors diagnosed her as psychologically unstable with elements of obsessive rescue syndrome. She is convinced that her mission is to protect her grandson from evil, even if it means breaking the law, said the psychiatrist. She doesn't understand boundaries. She is dangerous. The court's decision was swift: involuntary hospitalization. A closed clinic, no right to leave, limited access to any form of contact. I sat on a bench outside the school. Noah was playing nearby. Now, every day, I walked him to and from school myself. We bought a watch with a tracker. He was always nearby. He went back to drawing. And you know what? The last picture he showed me had two figures. Me and him. And above us, the sun. But not instead of me anymore. Above us. This time, the silence is real. And it's ours. When you go through real fear, the kind that freezes the blood in your veins and erases your voice, something in you changes forever. I didn't become braver. I became more cautious, more alert, and much stronger than I ever thought I could be. We stayed in the same town. I no longer trusted new beginnings. I wanted to put down roots, not run away. For Noam, it became a symbol of security. The same teachers, the same house, the same mom, nothing disappearing. We created new traditions. Every Saturday, we baked pancakes. On Sunday mornings, we went for a walk to the lake. Sometimes we didn't talk. Not because we had nothing to say, but because it was peaceful. One evening he asked, Mom, is she nice now? I froze. The question stung, but it didn't surprise me. She was sick, Noam. And not everything people do out of love is actually good. But it's not your fault. Will she come back? I hugged him. Now I wasn't afraid to tell him the truth. No, she can't take you away anymore. You're safe. I promise. His eyes, just like Daniel's, were calm for the first time in a long time. A few weeks later, I received an official letter from the clinic. Her condition was stable but unstable. She doesn't remember what she did. She believes she is still living with Noam. The doctors won't let anyone see her. She is isolated not as punishment, but as protection. And I felt no anger. Only sadness. Not for her, for the illusion that we could have been a family. I started writing. Not as therapy, but as a document. My experience. All the notes, all the events. Under a different name, in a different form, but honestly. As it is. One day, I received a letter from another woman. I also lived with the perfect mother-in-law. Thank you for writing. Now I know I'm not going crazy. I realized that my story was not unique. But my struggle was important. Not just for me. For everyone who had ever lost their voice. Gnome started laughing more often. He jumped around on the way to school, talking about the future, camping, a dog, new books. He became a child again. And I became his mom again. Fully. Unconditionally. And although I still sometimes flinch at the doorbell or an unfamiliar number on the screen, now I know. I won't break. Because there is a way out of any depth. Especially if you are holding the hand of the person for whom you learned to swim. 6 months have passed. Since the day I found Gnome wrapped in a blanket in a cold apartment where he was being read like a favorite book without asking permission. Half a year of silence. Real silence. Not the kind that envelopes you like poison. The kind that breathes. I didn't think we'd ever get here. We didn't talk about grandma anymore. We didn't mention the courts. We lived every day as best we could. And then a letter arrived. It came in the mail officially. From the clinic. A letter from her psychiatrist. Ms. M's condition is stable. She has the right to write a letter to her grandson. Any further contact is subject to the permission of her legal guardian. I held that piece of paper for several hours. I didn't know what to do. Throw it away? Keep it? Open it myself? Give it to Gnome? I took the letter to his room. I sat down opposite him. And for the first time I said, "Gnome, your grandmother wrote you a letter." He froze. "Do you want to read it?" The boy thought about it. For a long time. Then he slowly shook his head. "You can read it to me only if it's something good. But if it's about how I should be with her again, don't bother." I opened the envelope the next morning. Inside was a neatly written letter. Her handwriting was flawless, controlled. As always. "Noah, I know you probably hate me. And maybe you have every right to. But I remember how you laughed when I read you The Boy and the Fox. I remember your favorite cereal. And I remember how you called me your Mimi. I don't want you to forgive me. I just want you to know that I thought I was saving you. But in reality, I was saving myself. If you ever want to write, do. If not, I'll understand." I reread it several times. And I didn't show it to Noah. Because it wasn't a letter for a child. It was a letter to me. A belated confession. Perhaps the first sincere one. I didn't know if I forgave her. But I knew I didn't want to carry her pain anymore. Noah and I went to the lake, our place. He sat by the water, skipping stones. "Mom, are we staying here long?" "Forever is long enough," I replied. "Can we just do nothing today?" "We can. And you know what? That's the best plan ever." He smiled. The same smile as his father's. Alive. Real. I kept the letter in a box. I sealed it. I wrote on top, "Never give to a child without their consent. Because I will never let anyone else make decisions for him again. Or for me either." We survived. And now we live.